Israel is preparing for what could be an extended ground assault in the Gaza Strip against Hamas, a militant group that launched a surprise attack on the country over the weekend. The plans for an offensive came as Hamas militants threatened to execute Israeli hostages if the government continues to bombard civilian homes in Gaza without warning.
There's never been anything like this in the history of the region.
More than 900 Israelis and at least 687 Palestinians have been killed, with scores more injured and displaced. At least 11 U.S. citizens have died, according to President Biden. As the war heads into a fourth day, here's what you need to know. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the country was preparing for a mass offensive against Hamas. Dozens of tanks and hundreds of Israeli soldiers fanned out along the Gaza Strip border Monday.
בסיומה של המערכה, כל אויבינו ידעו שזאת הייתה טעות איומה לתקוף את ישראל. מה שנעשה לאויבינו בימים הקרובים יהדהד אצלם לדורות.
Well, look, I thought it was an appalling protest. I can't believe it went ahead. I condemn the protest. I just thought it was terrible in the circumstances, and most Australians would believe that the circumstances of the killings in Israel over the last 48 hours are unambiguously horrific.
There's no place for anti-Semitism in this country or indeed anywhere else.
We saw an extremely ugly and totally unacceptable display of not only anti-Israel sloganeering, but pure anti-Semitism. That was totally and completely unacceptable.
Fahad Ali was one of the protest organisers.
So what happened last night, from a minority of attendees, I think was disgusting. At the very beginning of the protest, one of the chairs of the rally had said, "We ask you to be respectful. We ask you to remember that we have Jewish allies here. We have Palestinian Christians here."
The attacks on Israel have been met by condemnation and, in some places, celebration.
There are atrocities being committed on both sides. It is ultimately the Palestinians that pay the highest price.
This was a Western Sydney Imam, Sheikh Ibrahim Daroon, on Sunday.
I'm elated! It's a day of courage! It's a day of happiness! It's a day of pride! It's a day of victory! This is the day we've been waiting for!
The Sheikh says his comments were taken out of context, saying, "I have been misquoted and my message has been misrepresented by sections of the media," and that he was referring only to the fact of the Palestinian people breaking the blockade after 16 years of grave suffering.
Our brothers and sisters!
Another fear here is that there could be a new front opened on the Lebanon border with Hezbollah joining, and Hezbollah has much more effective long-range precision rockets. Israel has threatened essentially to bomb Lebanon back into the Stone Age if Hezbollah were to launch a fight like this. The war in 2006 was incredibly devastating to Beirut and parts of Lebanon. It's one of the reasons why Hezbollah has not engaged in the fight, because I think they realize that Israel is not going to hold back in any way this time. They've said that. But if they're fighting two fronts, it's incredibly difficult to know how it's going to end.
All being marched away by Hamas terrorists. It is shocking, but this is the reality of Israel as we speak. Since the conflict began, Hamas terrorists have captured dozens, including children and women and the elderly. The Israeli government is grappling to define the exact number of people kidnapped. Palestinian Islamic Jihad says it alone has seized 30 hostages. It's both smaller and more brazen than Hamas. Meanwhile, Israeli news outlets speculate that over 100 people have been captured. What has stunned Israel and the world is the multi-pronged attack on Israel. Not the incident itself, but the sheer scale of it. The capture is in line with similar practices by Gaza terrorists like the one in 2006, when Hamas captured Gilad Shalit, a young conscript. He was the only one held hostage at the time. But the incident consumed the Israeli society for years. It became a national obsession. It prompted Israel to heavily bombard the Gaza Strip. Ultimately, over 1,000 Palestinian prisoners were released. This happened in exchange for Shalit's freedom. But now, dozens have been held hostage, a number that until now was unimaginable. Shocking visuals have been flooding the internet, like this one. It's an amateur video that has been geolocated to the Gaza Strip. It shows a barefoot injured woman. Her arms are behind her back. She's being dragged by armed men who brutally bundle her into the back seat of a vehicle. Now, the whereabouts of those held captive, much like her, have become a pressing issue for the Israeli military. They fear that the hostages are spread across several undisclosed locations across Gaza. You see, Gaza may be tiny, but it's heavily populated. It's subjected to constant aerial surveillance by Israel, but the Strip remains somewhat opaque. In 2006, Israeli intelligence failed to locate Shalit, and now the same worries are resurfacing. It's a race against time to locate Israeli hostages. This is something that entire families are eagerly awaiting. Shaken relatives have called on the government to bring home the captives. Many are sharing stories of their missing relatives on the radio. But remember, this attack has impacted families across the world. The list of kidnapped foreign nationals is growing. According to reports, 11 Thai nationals, a French citizen, several Americans and Germans, and one Britisher may have been captured. 2 Mexican nationals, 3 Brazilians, and a Nepali student are among those missing. As cruel as it is, this could be a bargaining chip for Hamas. It may want to exchange Israeli for Palestinian captives. It already seeks the release of all Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails. Around 4,500 Palestinians have been detained in Israel. The question is, will Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu free them? Will he agree to the demands of the terrorists? It seems highly unlikely. As difficult as it is, Israeli police is trying to eat the elephant one bite at a time, much like what you see here. The police claim that some hostages were released by Hamas after a gun battle. But even so, the human cost of this conflict continues to soar, and innocents are being kidnapped by terrorists. The question is, what will become of those who are collateral damage in this bloody fight? It's a dilemma that Netanyahu must find a way out of, while knowing that the answer is painfully obvious to those whose loved ones are being held hostage.
So there's a war again in West Asia, but where do its countries stand? For Arab nations, the Palestinian cause has been a rallying cry. For long, most of them have argued one thing: recognizing Israel must come with the creation of a Palestinian state. This has been the red line in West Asia, a line that has now disappeared in the sand, it seems. In 2020, Israel normalized ties with Arab nations, namely Bahrain, Morocco, and the UAE. It was called the Abraham Accords. The focus was economy and peace. It was supposed to be a dawn of a new West Asia. But Palestinians were left behind. Then there were reports of an Israel-Saudi peace deal. There was talk of concessions, regional security, even nuclear projects with Saudi Arabia. But the Palestinian cause was on the back burner once again. It's like the Arab nations had switched sides. They chose security and economy over Palestinians, which brings us to the Hamas attack on Saturday. Hamas says it was a retaliatory attack, an attack to hit back against Israel's actions in Gaza. But many believe it was bigger than that. It was a ploy to destabilize the region, to put a halt on the Saudi-Israel peace deal. So did they succeed? When the attack happened, all eyes were on Saudi Arabia. How would the Saudis react? What would they say? and Riyadh did come out with a statement. The starting of the statement sounded like any other. It noted the unprecedented situation, it called for restraint on both sides, and then there was the part about Palestine, the need to resolve the conflict, the need for a credible peace process. So restraint and need for peace, that was the crux. No clear support for one side, and that is telling. Then came the statement from the United Arab Emirates. They took it a step further. The UAE called it a serious and grave escalation, and they slammed the hostage-taking of Israeli civilians. They slammed Hamas. So no support from the Saudis and condemnation from the UAE. That's what Hamas got. What about the other players in the region? Turkey, Egypt and Qatar. We put them together because all three are vying for the same role. They all want to be peacemakers. Erdogan says Ankara is ready to do what it takes to lower tensions in the region. Listen to this.
Turkey is ready to do what it can for the clashes to end as soon as possible and lower the tensions that have further increased with the latest incidents. We are determined to intensify and continue the diplomatic efforts we have launched for the calm to be established again.
Which brings us to Egypt. It shares a border with Israel and Gaza. The country faces elections in 2 months, so it cannot afford mayhem in the region. It played the role of a peacemaker in the 2021 war, and it's likely to try again. In fact, other groups are already sending signals through Cairo. Hezbollah, for one, has sent a message to Israel through Egypt.